Hey guys, Coach Zack with Ultimate Baseball Training. Today's video, we're going to go through a pitching mechanics breakdown. We're going to break down every component there is we're going to include the windup, we're going to include the stretch, we're going to have different pointers here and there, so that way you can get all your mechanics dialed in, and that's going to give you a lot more success in your upcoming season. Let's get right to it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start in the windup. I like to break down the windup into 6 different steps. So the first one is the very basic, very simple. After you get your sign, the first thing obviously that you do is you get your rocker step. You know, whether your rocker step be back behind the rubber or kind of out to the side, a little bit in between. It's completely a personal preference for you guys. For me, I like to kind of get a little bit more towards the side, just so that way I have a little bit of clearer path up into my leg lift. And so after you kind of get your rocker step, you want to make sure that we're parallel with the rubber. We want our foot to be parallel with the rubber. That way we can use that to push off in a couple, as we go down the mound, we want to have as much power on that back leg as we can. So really making sure we're getting parallel with the rubber on that. So step 3, moving on, is going to be our leg lift, okay? Now, when it comes to our leg lift, we want to make sure that we're not getting too high, but we're not getting too low or too rotational. So that way everything has to be fluid, everything has to be in one motion. So that way our body works together, it works in sync, and everything fires off at the same time. So, when we get to our leg lift, we don't want to get to a true balance point with that. I know you hear a lot of times that you want to get to a balance point, but we don't want to do that because we don't want to stop anything. If you're about to run a race, you're not going to stop halfway. So we want to make sure when we get here, we get to a control position, but it's all in one motion. So that way when we come down, it's all coming out at the same time. So after we get done with our third step, which is our leg lift, that's when everything gets a little bit more complex. So at this point, we want everything working together. We want everything working simultaneously, so that way we can get enough energy and be as efficient as we can going down the mound, so we can throw as hard as possible. So when we come with our leg lift, that's when we want our back leg and our front hip to work simultaneously. We want those to work together. So what we're going to do when we sink into our back hip, we want to make sure we're leading with the front hips. That way we're not opening up, we're not swinging the gate, we're not over rotating, and that way we want to make sure we're getting and using as much power that we generate in the back leg as we can. All right, so now that we've gotten down the mound, we're going to move into step 4, which is going to be our landing. When we land, we want to make sure that we're not opened up with both of our hips. When our shoulders aren't opened up, we got to make sure that our hips and our shoulders are working together. You often hear the term hip to shoulder separation. Well, what that means is that your hips are open, but your shoulders are still closed. So if you're a right-handed pitcher, your shoulders and your upper body are still facing kind of towards the third base side. And the reason that happens is because the more torque and the more independently you can get those to work is going to allow you to be quicker when you fire your upper body towards the plate, which is going to allow you to throw the ball harder. Common thing that that happens is when we lead with our foot going down the mound, that's going to open up our hip, and when our hip opens, everything else opens. So the more and more you can kind of figure out and learn how to use your front hip to fire down the mound, you're going to see this come a lot easier to you. So now we have our first 4 steps down. We're going to get into the last 2, step 5 and 6. So we have our rocker step, our pivot, our leg lift, and then our landing. So if we're at step 4, we're at our landing. The ball is up and our hips and our shoulders are separated. Obviously step 5 is to make your pitch. There's not too much that we can say about the pitch, but the landing is so very important. You often hear a couple different ways that coaches like to teach. You hear a lot of don't resist anything. You hear a lot of become a fielder, get down. But there's a couple different ways that I like to teach, and I like to give a couple pointers on those as well. So a common thing that we don't really see as much in younger pitchers is front leg leverage. What front leg leverage is when you're in your follow through after you've already thrown the pitch, you don't see a lot of younger pitchers that have a finish on a stiff front leg, because you hear as soon as you release the ball, you need to bend your knees and be a fielder. When in reality, that's not what we need to be teaching. We need to have front leg leverage. That way, we're not wasting any of the energy, any of the torque that we built up throughout our windup. and the more front leg leverage we can get is the more on top of the ball we're going to be able to get to, which in turn results in more downward angle and more ground balls from a pitcher's standpoint. So just to recap the 6 steps of the windup, obviously number 1 is your basic rocker step, the start to the motion. Number 2 is your pivot, getting parallel to the rubber. Number 3 is our leg lift, and like we mentioned before, we're not trying to get to a true balance point. We want to be in a controlled position. That way we allow our hip enough room to work efficiently down the mound into step 4, which is moving down into our landing, making sure we have good hip to shoulder separation when we land. Number 5, obviously the throw. And number 6 is our finish, really making sure that we're getting that front leg leverage that we want, so that way we can be as successful as we possibly can. Now that we've talked about the windup, I want to talk a little bit about the stretch as well. A lot is fairly similar, but there's just a couple different tips that I'm going to teach you guys and show you guys, so that you can kind of use those in your game too. So obviously when we're in the stretch, that means there's a runner on base, first, second, and third, or wherever. So a big tip that I want to introduce to you guys is whenever you're in the stretch, always hold the toughest pitch to grip. So for me, it's a changeup, because if we hold the easiest pitch to grip, as soon as we come set in the glove, it's going to be really hard to get to that pitch. So we're going to be moving our glove, and as soon as we start moving our glove or digging in our glove, that's going to let the hitters know automatically that it's going to be some form of an off-speed pitch. All right, the next thing I want to talk about, when you're in the stretch, you have one of your biggest jobs is to make sure we're holding those runners on. We're not allowing those runners to steal as many times as they want. So when we're holding these guys on, we got to make sure that we know where to come set, so that we can be quick to the plate and at least give our catcher a chance to throw him out if he decides to run. So we don't want to be so wide that we try to get so quick, and that way we don't load up on our back leg, because we're just going to decrease in velocity on that, and we don't want that to happen. But also, we don't want to be so straight up that it makes it so hard to be quick, and we're just so slow, and we don't give our catcher a chance to throw anybody out. So it's kind of a trial and error thing. Just find something that feels comfortable for you, and that way you can be quick, and you can also get enough power on that pitch with your lower half, so you don't decrease any velocity. Next few things I want to talk about, we're going to include together. It's varying looks and where to come set as far as our hands. So imagine we have a runner on first base. When you come set, you want to come set pretty close to where your hands break. So that way you're trying to take away as much time as you can going towards the plate, so that runner cannot steal second base. And another thing we don't want to do is we don't want to come set over top, or when we try to grip our pitch, come set over top of our right shoulder. That way the base runner is going to be able to see that, and as soon as he can see that and pick up on that, the hitters are going to know what pitch is coming. Another tip that's going to help you guys out when you have runners on base is put emphasis on trying to vary your times when you come set. As a base runner, whether they have something that you do in your mechanics, or they have a timing system, they're trying to pick up anything they can so that they can be more successful in trying to steal a base. A lot of the times that stolen base is stolen off the pitcher instead of the catcher, because they just fall into so much of a routine. So something that I would recommend is, after you guys come set, just try to practice getting into a 2 or a 4 count, or a 1 count, 3 second, 5 second count, just so the base runners, they can't pick up on anything that you're doing, and you're going to keep them on base. So we kind of talked a little bit about just different mechanics with the runner on first base. Let's go into you have a runner on second base. Something that doesn't really have to do with anything mechanically, but make sure you have different signs with a runner on second as you do if guy on first base, or if nobody's on. Have multiple signs, just so that way the runner at second base can't pick up on those and relay them to a hitter. But one thing I see a lot of times, especially in young pitchers, it gives a lot of their pitches away, is, so say they come set like this when a runner's on first base. You can see where my glove, the webbing of my glove is facing me, so the opening is pointing towards second base. Well, they don't change anything when the runner on second, so they allow that base runner at second to see right in their glove. They can see every pitch that they're throwing. So Obviously we don't want that to happen. So something I would recommend is just try to turn your glove a little bit. That way your pitch grip and the opening of your glove is facing you. So that way you're not giving any signs away. You're not tipping any of your pitches, and the hitter he doesn't know what pitch is coming. Last but not least, the runner on third base. I know, especially as we're getting older and we're in the younger age, we like to go out of the windup all the time. So with a guy on third, we tend to try to choose to go out of the windup. Some that I want you to try to get comfortable with and try to make a habit is go out of the stretch with a guy on third base. The reason we want to go out of the stretch when a guy is on third is because if we go in the windup, as soon as we step back with our rocker step, that runner can go. And if for whatever situation, late in the game or it's a 1 or 2 run ball game, if that hitter lays down a squeeze bunt and he gets a running start because you're in the windup, that run's going to score every time. So it's just little mental tips like that can change the course of a game and help you be more successful and be a better pitcher. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss any of the upcoming videos we have, and that way you can make 2020 your greatest season yet.